Hey there, film fans. I'm Jeff.
I'm Dave.
And I'm John, and welcome back to The Love of Cinema, a pod in which we'll challenge one another to discuss movies, both new and old, with a strictly positive critical eye.
That's right. And to avoid any lazy negativity, we have beers. We're making this a drinking game. Anytime you hear us say something negative about a film, you're going to hear this sound. And that means that we are drinking people. We hope you drink along with us and have some fun.
So pour yourselves a glass, and we're going to get into something that's a little bit long overdue.
A little bit long overdue. Yeah. That is the release schedule of Black Widow, I believe you're talking about.
It's definitely I mean, for a movie that was announced in 2014, it really took its time to come out.
Yes.
Wow. And it had so many different release dates, and then of course COVID hit, and they weren't going to release it, and it's like, are they gonna? Are they not?
And they refused to just set it in the future. They were like, "No, we're gonna set it in 202016 when it was supposed to come out."
Yeah. For anyone curious, this does take place between just after Civil War, at the timeline, and it had a good opening actually. Did you see the numbers for this? Like 80 mil domestic and like 60 mil in premium. Like so, 80 mil worth of people went to the movies, and 60 mil worth of people stayed at home.
And that 60 mil they love because the Disney gets a higher cut of it. So
absolutely,
cool.
Yes.
Damn.
What an opening! $100 million opening. Look at that.
Yeah, highest domestic openings is Rise of Skywalker, I believe. That's what someone said. But I'm not gonna lie. Like, I've been waiting a long time for this one. We've been trying to get Scarlett to have her own film for a long time.
Yeah.
And it went through, I want to say, 3 different incarnations before they settled on this script. And we'll talk about what that is.
We will, but first, Dave, we got to go ahead and shout our people out. So, John, can you please honors?
We're going to do the shout outs right now. We have a beer sponsor. His name is Carlos Barrozo. You can give him a follow on Instagram if you're feeling it. The handle is Cbarrozo Bar 2019. That's CBARROZOBAR 2019. And if you're digging the music on this episode and every single fucking episode of this podcast, then please head on over to soundcloud.com/Dasein-artist. And you can download all of this music and all the other music by Dasein, Dasein, for free.
Bargain.
And please don't forget, like us, love us, rate us, review, subscribe. We are at The Love of Cinema Pod on all the platforms except for Twitter. We are just at The Love of Cinema there. But please, please, please hit us up. We need the love. We will get back to you, especially if you have any thoughts on today's episode, because Dave is clearly very passionate about it. And we are going to go back and forth with whoever wants to write into us. So hit us up. All right, let's do it, guys.
I promise you, this is a promise. If you reach out to us on the socials, Dave will respond. That is absolutely promise.
That's the only promise we can make.
We will too.
Also, we haven't had a review in a while, and that does help everybody find our show. So there's a lot of movie podcasts out there, but if you think it's fun, have people talking about positive things about movies, even if they didn't really love the movie, but we try to keep it positive here. That's our goal. Plus, it's fun, and we try to drink. If you like the show at all, please tell your friends and write a review. Take 10 seconds. We'd really appreciate it.
As far as the algorithm goes, the more you comment, the higher we go.
And you know what? Negative comments. I don't know if you've ever been on Facebook or if you were in the United States in 2016 or 2020. Negative comments work too. We like it positive. I believe we have a perfect rating, but we will sacrifice the rating to get some more listeners.
Love us or like us, just tell us about it.
Yeah.
Well, let's stop selling out and let's get into Black Widow. Part of Phase 4 here in the MCU, and
so just
here
before we
to
get started,
set up is our resident MCU director, Dave. Our resident MCU expert, Dave. Go ahead.
Who saw this in theaters and who saw it at home?
Theaters.
All of us saw it in theaters.
We all saw it in theaters. Okay, great.
Yeah. I think we all saw it in Dolby Atmos.
Yeah, I went to Dolby as well. I was in like row E. We were sitting damn close, and this was full screen.
I did not see it in Atmos. I saw it in real 3D. I would recommend not seeing it in real 3D. But the theater near me has really comfy chairs.
Yeah, I'm not a fan of those 3D conversions either.
It had a couple moments where it was cool, but there were a lot of times where I was like,
it is converted, isn't it? It wasn't filmed in 3D, so it is a conversion.
Yeah. Right. Some cool moments, but anyway, I would recommend not.
Hiding formats though, so yeah. All right, let's do it, Dave.
So basically this deals with Natasha, as in Black Widow, and it goes
Natasha
right back
Romanoff.
it goes right back to her beginning as a little kid. Almost, I would say, one of her first missions. I don't think it was actually her first mission, but it was one of. But it's a very important mission, and then it jumps forward to fully grown, and it basically deals with her coming back and finding the people that she was in a bit of a fake family with when she was a Russian agent in the US. Great concept. I know it's been done before, but I feel like they managed to still put a bit of an original spin on it.
The fake family thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think so too. I would say just to jump in right here.
Go.
A lot this year of a great opening to a movie where honestly it might be, and I'm not saying it is because the themes haven't gotten introduced, but I'm thinking of Quiet Place 2. I'm even thinking of fucking Mortal Kombat. These openings, which are set way of where the action of the film is going to take place, they've done a really good job because this movie opening was really, really cool. Natasha looked like Run. She had her thing going. Her dad was David Harbour, who looked young. Mom was Rachel Weisz, and I was in, man. They were running from something. I didn't know what they were running from. I thought it was hot. So Dave, kudos.
Yeah, no, the two kids who were cast as like young Natasha and young Yelena were awesome in this. David Harbour made up as young David Harbour, nailed it. Rachel Weisz, always great. You really can't go wrong in like the opening of this film. And I'm not gonna lie, when we were sitting in the cinema and the Marvel logo came up and it's gigantic up there on the screen and the music finished and at least 3 people in the theater went woo, and nice. I might have been one of them.
Of course.
So yeah, it takes you right back and it brings you in, and then it jumps to basically just after Civil War in the timeline where they've just had the Sokovia Accords. They're hunting all the Avengers down. She's on the run. Basically she's trying to keep her head down, and it doesn't work at all. It doesn't work.
Nice. That's it. What did you?
Guys, are we gonna? Are we gonna have are we gonna announce if we're gonna talk about spoilers or not? Because I know with our new movies,
we'll keep it spoiler free up until a point, and then we'll announce that this is the part where you might want to stop.
Yeah, sure. So cool. I think, cool. Dave, that's great because we just got into the intro here and we're getting into it. We haven't really talked about the time different, but I think it is also important to just to really into the fact that none of these TV shows were supposed to come out before this movie. For instance, for me, I heard the word Sokovia Accords, and my initial reaction was, everybody shut the fuck up about these Sokovia Accords. I'm so sick of hearing about these Sokovia Accords because WandaVision talked about them. Soldier talked about them. It's like I'm so tired of why do Sokovia Accords? They were so long ago, but out of respect, it was supposed to come out last year, and it was set in 2016. Or at least it was, if the movie were to in timeline, which is after Civil War, it would be 2016. So yes, I think that's cool. What do you guys? Should we get the stories about just a little bit, just the premise? Some of it's been teased, but does anybody? Let's. Good plot synopsis here is on the IMDb, where I get all my synopses. It's very simple. A film about Natasha Romanoff and her quest between the Civil War and Infinity War. It's hard to get into this. This is what I fucking said.
It's like, oh, Dave didn't really fill in the gaps. No, that was it. That's it. That's the whole story.
I guess it is.
No,
yeah.
I mean,
they do introduce some great characters. Like we get Red Guardian finally, and Taskmaster, of course, is one of the main antagonists in it. And also they're dealing with the Red Room, which has been mentioned a lot.
I think it's okay. We can mention that now. I think the main plot of this movie,
I mean,
without giving away specifics, is that Natasha Romanoff, while she's on the run during the aftermath of the Sokovia Accords, when the Avengers have split up, this is her personal tale of going to deal with her origin. So it's kind of an origin of an origin. It's kind of weird because we're always wondering what was happening to her in the Avenger movie sagas. You could kind of tell she had been doing stuff every now and then. They have alluded to some things, but this is her remembering, and some of it is reminisced. Some of it is literally shown to you, like the opening, about how she was raised, dealing with Florence Pugh's character. I don't know if we want to say who that is yet.
I do like that they kind of like, because the Red Room's been shown, it's been talked about, so they kind of skipped the whole Red Room section. But like basically, yeah, her entrance, like her clearing her ledger, if you like, was to kill the guy who ran the Red Room to get into the Avengers. And
the Red Room is basically what, for listeners?
The Red Room is where where they were taken to be trained, and horrible things were done to them. They had as it turns out, she had psychological training, but not all of them did. Some of them had chemical training.
And it is a Russian organization, right? Yes. It is affiliated with Russia, right?
Yeah, absolutely. It's a Russian organization.
Because I was curious if they were going to eventually in this movie try to walk the line of, kind of what they did with exactly what they did with Hydra, starting in Germany, but then it kind of became its own thing, right? So I wasn't sure if they were going to do that with the Red Room, but the Red Room is a Russian affiliated high secret intelligence thing. So it's her dealing with that. And the whole family gets to come along for the ride. The way they introduce the characters in her present day, I think that's where the movie really takes off for me. When she meets, we can say who she is, right? Sorry, if you really don't want to hear anything even relatively beyond that, then go ahead and turn this episode off, because we're going to talk about her. Like, we're going to talk about who Florence Pugh is, because I think you may have seen her in some of the trailers. So go ahead and shut it off if you want to watch the movie first. Come back to us and check out the rest. Florence Pugh plays her sister. And there's a really cool tiny little opening with her. So you get a tiny little backstory into her, which gives you a lot of information for the setup of what they're going to try to do, which is rescue all the widows from the chemical brainwashing that has been occurring. Not psychological. Yeah. This is physiological.
They went chemical this time.
Yeah. So they team up, and they go and they start rounding up the old parents. They get David Harbour, and this movie just takes off. I think his scene is when it really took off for me. The ladies have an awesome fight scene when they reunite. It was fun. I enjoyed it. I enjoyed them getting chased by the widows. But I think for me, the movie really started when they rescued David Harbour, because that's where that Marvel dynamic is, that he had so much humor. They kind of hate him still. But also, I really kind of landed for me there.
Florence, as well as Yelena, with the second they introduced her, it started taking off for me, because her deadpan delivery of the humor is just on point. Everything she came out with, I enjoyed, like making fun of the hero poses, all the stuff that happens, like the jokes back and forwards. And I mean, I'm not gonna lie, like I went with my wife to see this, and she was laughing her ass off at the interaction between Scarlett and Florence, because they literally,
they have good chemistry,
despite being fake sisters, they act like sisters.
Which is good, because one thing going into this movie, one thing that I was kind of curious to see is that anyone who's a fan of what they've done with the MCU movies, Natasha Romanoff, Scarlett Johansson's Black Widow, is dry, but she might have some one-liners here or there where she's kind of winking because she knows she's kind of making fun of something, or but she's not like intense comic relief. She is a straight man, straight woman, straight character in the scheme of the, if Robert Downey Jr. was around, he was making the jokes.
Yep.
So like she was often the straight person. So I was curious to see what they were going to do with that. And I do think they thread that needle really well, with Florence Pugh helping a lot to kind of take some of that away from Scarlett, so that we could still see Scarlett as the foundation, which she kind of always was, right? Like she didn't have these crazy superpowers. She's an emotional foundation. And I think she also was in this, and it never got boring. That's what I respect. I was kind of afraid she was going to get a little boring for me.
And it's also good to see the character fleshed out a little. Like, because normally it's like you send in Natasha, she's fake vulnerable. She does the thing to get what she needs to hear. And, then she has the cool quips. It's like, I was faking it the whole time, and now you've told me everything I want to know. Or, she beats the crap out of someone spectacularly. And it was good to see just an extra layer to the character where that was still happening, but there was also this other interaction. I mean, I'll go on the record right now and say that this did family better than Fast and Furious.
Yeah, I think that goes without saying for this fucking installment of the Fast and Furious movie. So I agree with that too. And actually, to that point, I think that the Marvel-ness of this movie, it is unavoidable. It really, really is. So things like they haven't seen each other in a while. I know if you haven't seen the movie, or it's not clear. Like the fake family gets reunited at a certain point, and Florence Pugh's character, you know, they get this emotional scene, and she runs off to the other room, and immediately David Harbour, who's not a real dad, goes off to the scene. It's like, I'll go talk to her, and then she's like, if I wanted to talk to somebody, I wouldn't have run away. And it's like, okay, well, this is just like the Marvel shit. Like they almost just own this shamelessly. And they do another thing in this where they talk about how plans are bad, which I think is a really weird flex for them to be like, that's a bad plan. And I'm like, bro, we're about to see it. So, you know, are you trying to lower our expectations before we see this plan come by saying like 3 times, like, yeah, that's a and I was like, well, let me decide as the audience member. So there is the Marvelness, but they do thread that fun really well. And I think David Harbour does a good job, but because he's playing a character, like he's very distinctly, it's hard to explain in this, but he's a character actor in this. Whereas Florence, she seems straighter, but she really is taking on the brunt of that comic relief, the way that Thor and Captain America and all the other Avengers, when they get their moments to do that, they do well. She did it better. She did it better seamlessly and almost every single time. Even when the emotional stakes were at its highest, she was still able to get that charm, that charisma, and to get the emotional backing. Because the one thing about Natasha's character in the other movies is because of the as I think John said, the fake what's the word you said, the fake vulnerability, the fake I never really know that. I'll be honest, didn't necessarily land in this movie when she was doing like she was trying to play with people. Like she wasn't going full mind game, but she was doing some weird fake vulnerability thing, like with our villain, for instance. But having Florence be actually emotional, that actually made the Natasha story emotional, whereas she was always the emotional point of these Avengers movies, even though I didn't know whether or not it was genuine. But this movie I knew was genuine, and I did appreciate that.
Yeah, I think it is kind of, I think anyone, if you're a fan of these movies or not, this saga or not, you can't really disagree with that. Because again, just the challenge, just imagine sitting around in the room talking about this movie. Like Black Widow is supposed to be kind of emotionless. Like that's who she is in the scheme of the Avengers. She was trained to be like this. We kind of heard, how many fucking times do we hear about the blood in her ledger and how she's just like stone cold. Like, and she has those smiles and some wry comments, but I was like, how are they going to make her seem emotional? Because that's not really her thing. Even in Jeff, you alluded to it. There's a big sequence toward the end of this movie that is kind of calling back to the very first time we meet her, or the first time we meet her officially from the beginning of the movie, where she's manipulating somebody while she seems to be interrogated in the first Avengers movie. It's a callback to that, where she like plays up her vulnerability and this guy. That impacted me less because that was kind of a what's going on, whodunit sequence than the stuff you're talking about, which was creating a family around her that made her seem like she had emotions. I'm not saying that in a critical way or negative way of Scarlett Johansson is acting. It's just the character isn't supposed to be vulnerable. So we had to see her vulnerability through her actions, which is always cinematic. So I do think it lent itself as a device. And I think they pulled it off well. Let's give a shout out to director Kate Shortland. I haven't seen any of her movies. Yeah. This is her first, this is her first project with Marvel, I think, right? Yeah. So, I mean, that was fun. It was fun to see, we kind of, all right. So I think they're doing exactly, Kevin Feige is a genius. I think they're doing exactly what they want to be doing with this second generation stuff. We saw a lot of the same directors in the main chunk of the early MCU movies. And that's why those movies feel so similar. They stayed with them. They were all talking to each other all the time. So Dave, I don't know if you can speak to this, if you know more on it than I do, but clearly this is part of the phase 2. They're reaching out to directors they hadn't reached out to before. They're getting voices that have never had this kind of, platform before.
That. I mean, Eternals is coming next with like Chloe Zhao. Doing like directing that, and that I've seen a couple of trailers from that, and that looks awesome as well. And they're going in a really interesting like take with that. But yeah, they definitely are mixing it up in this series, and I think the more they move towards intermingling the streaming and the film, I think they're taking more chances.
I think so.
Yeah, I mean, it seems like it. Yeah.
So, what do you guys think about the tone? Because this very quickly becomes an international espionage movie, and this and F9. It's like the amount of times I thought about
Widow's Mission Impossible.
Yeah, I mean, Mission Impossible. Every now and then a Bond thing here and there. Every now and there's like it's like all the espionage kind of themes come into play. Some things get rushed. We go to I get Belarus and was it Belarus or was it is that where they go? Is that where the safe house is?
Budapest.
Budapest. Man,
No.
I always get these fucking.
Yeah.
No, it's Budapest.
Pesh.
And
They
then
have
St.
that-
Petersburg.
they have that
is where
argument
they
in the
end up,
movie.
yeah.
So they go back and forth with these
Pesh.
things so quickly and sometimes without stakes. Whereas like a Mission Impossible movie, for instance, like how do you get him out of Budapest? You know what I mean? It's like there's always a sequence where she just shows up and then leaves, and then some things like that. But again, the Marvelness, it's there and it's fine. But what did you guys think about that as the tone? Was it enough? Could they have gone farther? Was it right on the nose?
I really like that they didn't make her perfect. Like, this character had a lot of flaws coming up through her past, and they showed those when they showed that, yeah, she was a killer, and that she did do all these horrible things before she, that was her past, and that's what she's trying to atone for. And I like they didn't shy away from it. Like, she had flaws, she killed people, and that is something that they could have just gone, could have gone the hero element, and they didn't. They created like a really nicely flawed character.
Nice.
Yeah.
What do you think?
I do think it worked, especially I like the MCU stuff. I don't know if and I'm really happy that this exists for people who are obsessed with this stuff, because there's just so many opportunities to explore this universe they're creating, which is really fun. In terms of this though, again, I do think it worked. I don't know if I would have minded, because Natasha Romanoff is a spy. She's not a superhero. Like, we know that from early movies. I don't know if I would have minded if I kind of half expected them to go a little grittier, a little bit more grounded in realism, and not have the shiny big action sequences that, like, let me just give you an example just to be really specific. It was awesome. Of course, part of me was like, yeah, you're kind of waiting for these big action sequences. But when she falls like 50 feet from a helicopter and lands on her knee and just looks up, I was like, her leg is shattered, like shattered. They did a really good job in the Marvel Avenger movies of whenever she was fighting alongside the Avengers, she never did shit like that. They never just had her jump off buildings and stuff, because they knew we would be like, what? So there were a few moments here where I kind of felt them saying, I feel like we need to give a little fan service here, and they've earned this action sequence. And I think part of me was maybe curious if they were going to explore a grittier version of this story. I don't think it made it for a worse movie. I think Marvel fans are still going to be very satisfied.
Oh, yeah.
But part of me did think that they were going to go spy thriller, and it was going to be filmed differently than the other Marvel movies. I think that this, even though I still made that comment about Kate Shortland, I think she did a good job. I do think it feels like a Marvel movie. The way they announced this second stage of all these movies, how proud they are of them being genre films. I guess this is a mission movie. I was kind of half anticipating it to feel very unlike Marvel movies. And if this is a sign of things to come, I don't think it's going to be that dramatically different, which is not a bad thing. It's just, it is what it is. I still think I was satisfied. Like, what I figured I was going to get when I went into the theater. And the kick-ass fight scenes were fun to watch. The timing was good. You get your perfect blend of heart, humor, mission, action, and kick-ass costumes. Like, it's all there.
I mean, I'll push back against that a little bit, mainly because she is a superhero. She's not a spy anymore. So she's gone into the superhero realm, so she relies on the superhero tricks she now has. But the rest of the family are still relying on those old spy tricks. And I think that's where the fun sort of comes, because, like, they have the gadgets. She doesn't have the gadgets, and then the gadgets come into play throughout the plot of the movie as well. So I feel like I went the other way. I was like, I'm glad that she stands a little separate. Yeah.
You know what I mean, though? She doesn't have superpowers. And Florence Pugh even calls her out. I doubt that line's great. I doubt the space god has to take ibuprofen after a fight. I love that line. I love that line, because they were calling her out. They were like, are you really going to say that you, I can't remember the context of that scene, but she basically was like, you're not one of them.
Yeah.
She was calling her out. So they made fun of it. And that gave me all I needed to know. Like, let's at least point out the fact that, like, she is the spy going back to her roots. But just for fun, I think I would have also enjoyed seeing a really gritty, grounded version of this film, but it doesn't matter. Like, that's just theoretical. Yeah. When this movie ended, I was like, good. That was probably exactly what it was going to be. And now, super spoiler alert, Really turn it off if you haven't seen this.
Yeah, there is one after credit scene in this thing. We'll tell you that.
Yeah.
But
but before you go, just know that this whole movie, what it's about, we're talking about plot and character and stuff. What this is about is choice. It's about human beings and whether or not they deserve a choice in their own fucking lives. That's what this movie's about. So they're going to rescue widows. And just before people leave for the spoiler, we haven't even talked about that.
Let's get into that.
They're going to rescue widows who are being controlled by Ray Winstone's character, which to have the one person that can control people thing is tricky, but yeah, we could yada yada this stuff in the Marvel movie. But because of the chemical change that this specific group of women have, they wouldn't even recognize a family member. Their brains are completely distorted by this chemical, and their physical movements at the whim of a remote control can be changed. So what comes into play here is the essence of this movie is it's about giving people their own power, and that includes the power to make mistakes. Because as much as Ray Winstone, our villain in this, can say, you are the most badass fucking ruthless killers, and that's awesome, and you're women. So what he's trying to say is, you're women and you're the most badass people on the planet. That'll show the world. But it wasn't their choice.
I don't think that's not what he was trying to say, because there's a counterline to that where he talks about, I gave them the one thing we have way too much of, young girls. Well, it's like the one I used the one asset we have too much of, and it was really funny because I was like, okay, she might be taking him to jail, but the second he came out with that, I was like, oh, he dead. He's a dickhead. He's not making it through this.
And honestly, it wasn't the best villain out of all the Marvel movies here, but I think when he basically said, you guys are the most badass ruthless killers, and that's awesome, and you're women because hey, you can show those men how badass you are. I think he meant it. Even though, yes, he said that there's a lot of girls in the world, but these particular girls, the ruthless badass ones, it's great, but it was never their choice in the first place. No. So I think that's what this movie is really, really about.
Also, I just want to touch on that, because they do at the end of the film, like they find all the data of like how these girls have just been placed everywhere. And then there's a group of the widows who've been restored come to get Taskmaster in a plane. And I'm like, how much do you want to lay money that Disney's going to release a streaming series called The Widows or something to that effect that deals with them going around rescuing them? Like
everything's on the table, man.
This leaves the way open for a streaming series that still would feature Natasha, even though like her character has been killed off in the Avengers.
Or that should be anime. That should be their Clone Wars or something, and they just do like the animated version of that. But yeah.
But yeah, onto the super spoiler.
Yeah.
Oh man. Oh yeah, hold on. We'll get into that. I did want to. I'm glad you brought that up, Jeff. Just because, let's be honest. A lot of movies that are coming out right now are super fucking indicative about the social issues they're trying to tackle. When this started becoming clear that this was what this was about, there was a little bit of me that did consciously in the movie theater reflect on the fact that I think what the biggest achievement the older first stage of the Marvel movies had was the moral ambiguity they were able to bring to their superheroes. I do think they achieved that, like especially when it built into the Civil War and playing with government control and who's right and who's wrong. They did a really good job with that. When this started becoming super crystal clear that this was a movie about women getting to make their own choices, I was like, this could get really indicative or obvious. While I do agree with you that Ray Winstone's character was probably my least favorite villain in the Marvel MCU, I just don't think they did any.
He tried. I thought he had.
Yeah, it kind of reminded me of. We could say the same thing for. Avengers 2, Dave. Avengers 2, help me out.
Avengers 2, Ultron.
James Spader, Ultron. He tried. I think his was a little better. I don't think they gave. I think they may have, by not creating more of a. Yeah, Ultron was cool. I like it too, but I think everybody talks shit about that movie.
Everyone talks shit about the movie for the movie. They didn't like a lot of the things. I don't think that. I think that maybe they cut themselves off a little bit by not creating more ambiguity with some kind of emotional connection to Ray Winstone or something to make it a little bit more icky and a little bit more difficult for Scarlett to go in there and ultimately make that decision for the other women. Like there was also that they didn't maybe talk about quite so obviously, but big picture wise, I do think they pulled it off. I wasn't like rolling my eyes by the end of it just because they were
it is very clear what they're doing from the very beginning. Earlier on in the show, when I said Florence Pugh has a cool introduction, what this movie is about from the get-go. So it's right. Her introduction happens right after the setup at the beginning of this movie. And then you're like, oh, okay, this is a movie about freeing women from a man's control. But I do think they do a good job with it. And it didn't feel like, all right, now I'm just going to watch this play out so that we can, hoot and holler for that. Okay, all right. So my favorite part about this movie.
Final spoiler warning.
My favorite part about this movie is that Scarlett Johansson never has to make another Marvel movie again. And I mean that with respect. I mean that seriously. I think that Marvel may be suffering from the opposite of whatever the Blood Diamond thing is. I feel like they are going so balls to the walls with so much content with Disney and all this stuff that some of the things may not, they're going to lose a preciousness. I know that's not a word, but I think you'll know what I mean. I felt very happy to see her get put to bed. It's the same sensation I had at the end of Logan. I was like, good, let that man rest. Because now those movies are going to be even more awesome as we get over time. We get to look back on them and put them on a pedestal and start thinking about them differently, as opposed to this ongoing serialized universe that while it has its appeal, you are going to sacrifice that quality. So I felt really good when they showed that after credit scene. I was like, good, she did a great job. Take a bow, Scarlett Johansson.
That's a mislead. You will see that character again. I'm going to call it. You will see that character again. They're not going to bring her back from the dead. She's dead irrevocably. They established that. They're like, those characters are not coming back. But they're opening up the multiverse, which means you'll get a version of Natasha that didn't join the Avengers, that didn't give up on being an assassin. You'll get the evil Natasha. You'll get, a Natasha that did something else. Like the field is wide open because they're opening up the multiverse.
Give the girl a story. Give the kid a story.
Yeah, you will see that character again. I'm willing to bet.
But Scarlett,
do you think you'll
definitely see Yelena again?
Because obviously you'll see her. I guess I was kind of like, good, pass this fucking torch. Like let's put Black Widow to bed. Like, well,
the
a lot of movies.
The thing is, they did establish that, like with Loki going on at the moment, that not all the Lokis look the same. Okay. So it could they could definitely get another actress if Scarlett wants to step out.
Yeah. Because I know I have said I don't want to sound. We talked about this on this pod before. I'm a big fan of these movies and this whole universe. When Endgame happened, though, I was emotionally affected. I loved being in a theater where everybody was emotionally affected. Where he finally snapped his fingers, I was like, "Oh my God, they did it!" Like I felt so good about it, and I loved that we were as a community saying, "Wow, we have to let go of these people." That's tough. That's part of moving on in life. It's a big life lesson. It exists in all major storytelling, and it really bummed me out when I found out that they were like, psych, we're bringing back this person and this person. You can see this person, just because I feel like it's I don't know. It's just a personal feeling. So I had a good catharsis at the end of this film. Maybe you'll agree with me. Maybe you won't.
Yeah. They fixed the Gamora problem because they still had Guardians 3 to get out of the way, but that's going to be an interesting dynamic there because of what they did. But yeah, I would say at some point you'll see a different Black Widow. Might be a different actress. Don't know. Loki had an alligator version, so
All right, so I think my only Dave, tell me if you guys thought about this at all. I'm not even saying it bothered me. I just wasn't sure about the accents in this movie. Obviously, I know that they. I guess that's negative. They set up these people having very good American accents, so like. Clearly, they're not like. It's not like they can only speak in Russian. I wasn't saying why aren't they all.
Was it David Harbour?
Let's be real, dude. It was all of them. Like if I wasn't sure, Scarlett was the only one who, based on because she hasn't spoken with a Russian accent the whole time we've known her. So she was like, no, I'm not doing it. I doubt she made this decision on her own. But clearly, they had her keep the American accent the entire time. Yeah. And the others kind of drifted. And again, they set this movie up with them having American accents, so it wasn't like, sure, they can do both accents. But I was a little unclear about how authentically Russian their Russian accents were supposed to be for 90% of this movie. And it was something that I couldn't stop thinking about.
The thing I noticed the most was when Rachel Weisz drifted from her Russian to American.
She wasn't the only one, dude. Let's be real. I mean,
she's British.
Florence had some moments. Yeah. Florence had moments where she did that,
and I'm wondering.
David Harbour had moments where they did that.
No, I'm wondering, was it on purpose?
Oh, sure.
That's why I was asking you. I was genuinely asking if you thought those were choices or if you thought those were actors a little unsure and they were just going for it. Because a lot of this is ADR, right? Honest, these are giant movies. Yeah, they probably weren't recording this dialogue in the room.
A lot of it they would have in those sets. Yeah, that would have been recorded in the room. A lot of it. If they did drop an accent too bad, they would have gone back and fixed it, I'm sure. But,
as I say, they would have fixed.
The thing is, we
had an extra year.
We don't know whether it was a choice or whether it was just accents drifting. I like to think it was a choice because I noticed, like, when you notice a British actress slip from Russian into American, that's a choice. That's not an accident.
Good point.
You didn't think about this at all, Jeff. I'm shocked. You're such an accent dialect guy. It didn't bother you?
For me, it was more David Tennant. For me, if you're performing the hell out of it, I don't think anybody has an authentic accent. I sound different when I'm drunk than when I'm sober. Like, everybody sounds a little different. So
I sound different on the phone to me dad.
So I don't. As long as you're acting the shit out of it. But if you're stuck on your accent, if that's like clearly inhibiting your ability to really tell this story because you can't shake that thread that's stuck in your point of view of whether or not
let's benchmark this. Was it better than Cate Blanchett's in Indiana Jones?
That's our bar. That's our bar.
Yeah, I'm buzzing that movie.
All right. Okay, wait. There's one other tiny problem that I noticed here. I'll go. There were. For me, this all weighs on. I'm really running thin on giving a shit about these Marvel movies, if I'm being completely honest, because I never asked for any of this, and I want to be clear about that.
Clarify that. Why are you running thin?
Okay. I mentioned the Sokovia Accord thing. Oh, I didn't hear it. Sorry.
Yeah, you mentioned the Sokovia Accords.
I know that the Sokovia Accords thing was this literally takes place after the Sokovia Accords. But
how many times have we said Sokovia Accords on this podcast?
I want to say it and get it out there because everybody keeps being like, well, it was right after the Sokovia Accords. And I'm like, if we followed the Sokovia Accords, we wouldn't have movies. So it's like how every fucking movie is set during World War I or World War II. Watchmen, Wonder Woman, Magneto, Captain America, because the stakes couldn't be higher. It's good versus evil. It's so obvious. And now it's like we've got the Sokovia Accords, man. We got to stick by oh no, that's a violation of no shit. It's a violation of the Sokovia Accords. We wouldn't have a movie if we weren't violating the fucking Sokovia Accords. I don't care about these accords anymore. I didn't ask for any of this. I didn't ask for any of these characters. I didn't ask for any of these characters. The first, I think actually this is considered phase 4, John, but it really is the second stage.
Oh, excuse me. You're totally right. That was my fault.
But it is the second stage because everything was leading up to Endgame. And then after Endgame, basically the world exploded again. And somehow they're trying to pretend like Spider-Man Far From Home is like the coda at the end of Endgame, but it was like this fun thing. But this and the series are supposed to be part of phase 4, which essentially is we want to keep the audience guessing, which is a funny way of saying we're going to use what works and we're going to drop what doesn't. And who gives a fuck at this point?
Spider-Man 4 was definitely a lead into phase 4 because it sets up the multiverse.
I know, but they say that it's the end of phase 3, so it's the transition.
So Jeff, you feel like it's kind of like spaghetti against the wall a little bit?
Well, but we've done this movie correctly.
Also, for anyone who wants to comment on this, I'm not talking about all the talk about him being from another multiverse. I'm talking about what happens at the end in the after credit scene.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. So anyway, I was running thin. So the Marvel-ness and those things. The opening was awesome. That's why when John, you mentioned the grittier film, I was like, yes, I'm in for it. Even though it still is too important to the MCU. I think Dave would know better than me, but it still seems to be too important. So they couldn't really let it all go. I don't know if we'll see it. I guess we'll see Yelena. I was kind of hoping that this would be like a Rogue One and they would make sure at the end of this movie, but yada. We've already covered all of that.
I mean, I could be wrong. You may not see that character ever again. It could be like this is her late.
Feels like they set it up there, right? That would feel like a setup.
It definitely feels like they set up a series or. I don't think they'll go for a movie. I think
it looks like a TV show setup.
I think they'll go a setup for.
But Kevin Feige on an interview recently said everything that we are doing to set up some new characters on the Disney Plus platform is so that we will eventually be able to give them their own movies. He said that. Oh, that was a quote from him.
That's absolutely true. Like they've set up the Thunderbolts like crazy.
Yeah. But anyway, Jeff, finish what you're saying.
It's all good. Like, I love the first 2 episodes of WandaVision. I wanted the whole season just to be I Love Lucy. We've already discussed on this podcast that British people hate that. Everybody wanted something to happen because that's the expectation. We have to bring in more characters to convolute the fuck out of this, so that by the end of the series it's so confusing that it just ends and then you move on, because it's like, oh, it's about grief, it's about this, it's about women, it's about you throw all these things in, and I was like, I really liked just Wanda and Vision trying to figure out why they were stuck in there. I think I could have spent an entire season and that would have been really gripping. And to bring in 10 different other characters that all might be somewhere else in the MCU, it's like I can't keep track of it, and I'm tired of having to fill in gaps myself, or tired of having to like go online and
so just to
research it. But for this movie, I liked it, especially in the age of the Britney Spears situation, not just about the one particular human, but in the fact that she can't even choose to make a mistake. She can't even choose to accidentally say something terrible that the world could see, that literally somebody is watching her in her whole life, is proof that movies like this need to happen. I personally wish there was a different
Does anybody
IP.
see a problem here that like Britney Spears has more oversight than Trump did?
Trump, oh my God. Britney Spears has more oversight than anybody, than a child. Like, it's crazy. Okay, anyway, this is an important movie. I wish there was other IP, but then again, this is a cultural phenomenon. It's a juggernaut, and it's
Are you ready? Just to clarify, are you kind of saying something kind of similar to what I was saying? You're not opposed to the Marvel Universe expanding into all these different shows and movies, but you're kind of ready to see something different? Is that what you're saying? Or are you kind of ready for it to stop?
I don't want them to be connected anymore. It's too much, and this movie would have been better if it didn't connect to the rest of the MCU.
Yeah, and I think Dave, you might know more about this, but it kind of feels like they might pull that trigger at some point over the next couple of years, because I think it is starting to create a fatigue in the audience to try to transition into these newer characters as an audience member when you're still supposed to have all that in your memory can, as a given when you see these new movies, as opposed to something totally fresh and totally new. I don't know.
I got some box office results that says the opposite.
You're right. I totally get it. You're right. You're 100% right.
Like they're not fatigued. These people are hungry. Like, people were cheering when the Marvel logo finished. Like, they're hungry. And Marvel specializes in leaving it on that thing where you're like, oh, that's next. And of course they did the same in this film.
Let's not again, as much as I respect the producers and everyone that's involved with the Marvel Universe, they're now owned by Disney, and Disney does franchises, and they want the nostalgia. So, Jeff, they're never going to give it up, bro. They're going to keep doing that.
I mean, they were doing this long before Disney owned them, but like it's still, they're very, very good at making you want the next thing. You want the story to continue. What's the next part of the story? I don't want the story to continue. But I don't know if this one will. I mean, Yelena will, because we all want more of her. Let's not.
You know what? Touche. Yeah.
It's funny. I don't know if I'm pretty sure it wasn't there before, but after this movie dropped, she's been added to the credits of Hawkeye.
Nice.
I guess I do want to make this comment. Like, it's not a sad thing, but there was a little bit of me that was like, and another really amazing actor has put on a superhero costume. Like Florence Pugh, we're just it's just the age we live on in there. I'm not gonna lie, there's a little bit of me that feels a little bit of that fatigue. That's kind of like, wow. Jeff and I have 2 really good friends. We won't say who they are, but we know them from school. Like, we know these guys, and they're probably the most successful people that graduated with us from our undergrad, and both of them play superheroes on television. So it's kind of like we are kind of like, sure, but we are kind of living in this age where it's like you're not a movie star until you put a superhero costume on.
But
that makes me a little sad.
It's not that. It's these actors are finally stepping into these roles where they can bring something more to it than just putting on a superhero costume. Like, you can't deny Florence owned this film.
Yeah. And you know what?
Yeah, Scarlett Johansson. So did Robert Downey Jr. I mean, they've had this chemistry for the whole time. I'm just saying, there is a little bit of me that's like, how many other movies has Scarlett Johansson made in all these years when she was Black Widow? Not too many, right?
She could have made more.
Actually, there's more than you'd think. Have a look.
But to turn, a lot of them were also like crazy, too big for their scale. Like, she should have done more Marriage Stories, which was her best movie. To turn Stephen Dorff, who felt bad for Scarlett. I feel worse for you, Stephen Dorff, than I do for Scarlett. Exactly.
Yeah. That guy from the very first Marvel movie, Blade. Is criticizing people in Marvel movies?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, fuck you.
I don't think we need to go on about this forever. The last thing I'll say though is because a lot of the action sequences, including the first sister fight, which I did not like as much as you, John, because I was like, we already knew who Florence was by that point, and we already knew that they were going to be on the same team. So to fight, it's like this whole movie, there were a lot of people fighting who you didn't want either of them to get hurt. And that was tough for me, which I guess maybe will be a good legacy long term.
No, that was shameless fan service.
When they were fighting the widows.
The part about that fight was they had the exact same training, so they had the exact same moves. It was fun.
It was
a
very
side
fun,
reference to Taskmaster, who mirrors people. So
it was forced because they're fucking sisters, and we knew it. But whatever, it was fine. It was great for the widows though. When they were fighting the widows, too bad because the widows didn't know what they were doing. But you couldn't just have a defensive battle. So it was like, Scarlett, hurt them, but don't hurt them too much because they don't know what they're doing. And I was like, that's too bad. I'd rather have a ruthless killer here. But at the same point, at the same time, this is going to have a good legacy, I think. I think this is going to be...
I totally agree with that.
So.
I feel like the rewatchability of this one is going to be a lot higher than some. Like, I'm going to watch this more than I watch Thor 2.
Thor 2 is the worst movie in the whole series. Let's get the fuck out of here, Dave. Yeah, there it is.
How many movies have they made now, Dave? Starting from Iron Man 1, not counting Blade, not counting X-Men.
I did have a number
is this
at one
24,
point.
25?
I think we're at 25-ish.
I thought Endgame was 22. Spider-Man, this.
Okay.
Anyway,
Spider-Man counts. Spider-Man's coming out on my birthday this year.
Whoa!
I'll be going to see you there.
There's a Spider-Man movie coming out this year.
Yeah. Number 3, man. Gotta
That's
finish
the one that
trilogy.
opens they're opening up the multiverse with that. Like it's a multiverse trilogy. Like Wanda started it, WandaVision starts it, Spider-Man continues it, and then Multiverse of Madness comes out with Doctor Strange and opens it right the fuck up.
Wow. Wow.
Pretty stoked. Right on Tom Holland's 19th birthday. Okay, cool. So I'm kidding. He's older than that, but it seems like they've rushed these 3 movies. But anyway, let's go ahead and wrap this up.
Yes.
Fantastic discussion of Black Widow, but it is time for us to get into our recommendations of the week and what you've been watching. Dave, we always start with you, whether you like it or not. Anything you want to recommend the people?
Actually, we went back a little bit. After we went and watched Black Widow, we came home and I came out and my wife had put on Independence Day.
Nice.
And, like, this might be why we're married. I don't know, but I was like, she's like, yeah, this is like still one of the best like sci-fi movies ever. And we sat there and we watched it from top to tail, and it kind of still is. Like, it's go back. Don't watch the second one. It's fucking bullshit. But
I watched it this year, dude. The practical effects, fucking amazing, dude. Real fireballs. It's so good.
Have you ever seen a cloud in the sky and gone, in Independence Day, a spaceship would be coming out of that cloud right now?
I have a photo. I have a photo I took from like my building that I work in Midtown Manhattan of a storm rolling in over Jersey, and I swear to God, it looks like the effect in Day After Tomorrow. I was half expecting a ship to come out of it. Anyway,
nice.
Yeah,
John?
Independence Day.
John?
I watched. I went back. I have now seen all of Tarantino's movies because I finally watched Death Proof. I had never seen that one. Small movie set in Austin. He does cinematography, so it feels like his tiny movie. If you like him, you have fun. Girls kick ass in that movie. It's fucking great watching them.
Eli Roth directing, was it?
No, that's Quentin Tarantino
Directing that one? I thought.
Yeah, he made. It's a double feature with Rodriguez.
Rodriguez. Sorry, yeah.
He made the other one.
Yeah, he made Planet Terror.
Yeah. So I had fun watching that. Finally saw that. I saw Michael Mann's Manhunter, which is based on The Red Dragon. It's on the Criterion right now. That was cool. It's one of his early movies from the 80s. But my main recommendation, it's on Hulu right now, and it's out in theaters. Questlove's Summer of Soul. About the festival that was in Harlem. I can't remember the name of that park. It was in Harlem. The same summer as Woodstock. This footage was under wraps for all these years.
Do yourself a service and see that.
Yeah, man, it was really fun. You should definitely check it out. I probably should have gone to see it in the theater, but I turned my speakers way up here and watched it on Hulu and had a great time. Learned something and saw some great fucking music. So yeah, I'm going to recommend that one pretty strongly. Nice. I think it won the Grand Jury Prize at Sundance this year. That movie's legit.
I think we're watching it this week.
Nice.
It's fun. Yeah.
I did my annual watch of John Adams this year, which was interesting.
Hell yeah.
After last year and everything, but it was.
Yeah. Did you feel guilty? Were you like, oh?
No.
You're like, "Ugh."
No, I didn't. But yeah,
John Adams didn't own
did
slaves,
bring
baby.
all of that
I mean,
no, but he did when he was
half
a lawyer.
the fucking cast did.
When
Jesus.
he was a lawyer, he did defend some slave owners. And yes, a third of the founding fathers brought slaves to Philadelphia for the first continental.
Look, I think you're supposed to. I think it's good that I think
Uh-huh.
that thing might be even more enriched by the conflict that we bring to it as audience members. Now, am I wrong, or did you feel? Was it heightened and stranger because of it this year?
You know what? I'm gonna say this here at the end of this Black Widow podcast, and I'll save my other recommendation for the next episode when we do F9.
F9,
I'll save my
which
other
is
recommendation.
not
I will say
a
this.
tornado measurement.
So I'm
Sort of.
still reading the John McCullough book. It's very long, but I was on the Cape and I was, it was raining the whole time, so I read a lot. And it is Abigail Adams and John Adams both talk a lot about how it's about, we hold these truths to be self-evident that all men are created equal. So it's essentially saying that no sovereign can control the rights of others. So you have Britney Spears, you have Black Widow, you have a lot of relevant things now, obviously BLM. But half of these people own slaves that are saying that all men are equal and deserve to be free, which I know is not a new thought, but it really adds in even heightened circumstances that these guys are full of shit. The
cognitive dissonance is crazy.
Sorry,
yeah.
Mom and Dad, don't go insane. Like I still respect the way that our country was founded.
Yeah,
but
Mom and Dad, if it helps.
How much bullshit was because of the Constitution and then this and then that? But the people, they were a contradiction when they signed these documents. When they said every single person should not be ruled by another person while they own slaves. This is who founded our country. I think it's okay if we just go ahead and just reconsider every fucking thing. And we sit there and say, what works for us today? Because why should we listen to contradictions from 250 years ago? So yes, I did have a different
exactly
viewpoint.
right. Couldn't agree more. Hell yeah.
Nice.
All right. And I know Black people have been saying this for 50 years, so I'm so sorry that it took me so long
50?
to listen, man.
Fucking hundreds of, forever, right?
150,
Yeah.
man.
Yeah. Anyway, so thank you to everybody for sticking with us here. We had a fun conversation.
Black Widow, so much fun. Go see it in the theater, baby.
Yeah.
Please go see
Highly
it in the
recommend
theater.
Dolby.
They want you to see it at home because they get more money, but you'll have a better experience.
Yeah,
in
don't do
Dolby.
it. Go to the theater. Go to the theater.
Go to the Dolby matinee. It's cheaper.
Get vaccinated and then go to the theater. I hope Black Widow isn't the number one reason the Delta variant is spreading across the world right now. Jay, you shared those numbers at the beginning, and I'm getting a little nervous.
Yeah. All right, people. Thank you so much for listening, and we'll see you soon when we talk about Fast. Oh my God, F9. When we talk about F9. Fuck.